Time for a daily update. Quite a bit's happened in the last 24 hours. It's that type of situation at the moment with lots of things happening because of the coronavirus. I was actually listening to the radio today, and it was interesting to hear Anastasia Palaszczuk, the Premier of Queensland, trying to explain why it's going to be another couple of weeks before kids are able to go back to school. And things are ridiculous in New South Wales as well, that they're going back to school, but it's only going to be one day of a week, and they're going to ease into getting back to full teaching mode. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And of course, Victoria's probably even worse because Daniel Andrews just loves flexing his muscles and clamping down on everything. A classic authoritarian type of ruler. So it's interesting to see the dynamics between the federal government and the state governments right now, because at the moment you have Scott Morrison, who does seem to be making quite a bit of sense. I've got to say that I think his messaging's been very good, and he's saying, look, let's just get these kids back into school and being taught, and that's the sensible thing to do. God knows we can't afford to have our schools shut for too long, because we're already sliding down the international scale of education. We're performing extremely badly in education, and it's just understandably why, because we've got the curriculum overloaded with a lot of new age BS, that politically correct BS that just isn't proper teaching of vocational subjects, and that's what we need to get back to. I can't see that changing until the state education bureaucracies are overhauled, and that's going to be a very hard task. And I mean, New South Wales is ostensibly a Liberal Party-run state under Gladys Berejiklian, but you wouldn't know it. She's a fairly left-of-centre Liberal, from what I can see. And I don't like what she's doing. But what I've got is a little bit of a snippet here between Alan Jones and Anastasia Palaszczuk talking about, she's trying to rationalise why there's a delay getting the kids back into school. And to be quite frank, I don't think it's a very convincing argument that she makes. But I just think that basically these premiers, the gang of three, Andrews, Berejiklian and Palaszczuk, are being run by the unions, the education unions. And obviously the last thing teachers want to have to do is actually deal with the school kids. I mean, that's why they don't have great respect amongst the public these days, teachers. They used to, but they don't anymore, because it's really, what they're really focused on is their own careers, not the welfare of the kids. And that's obviously not all teachers, but it's a lot of teachers in the public sector that just aren't up to snuff. And I think that the state premiers need to get tough with them and take on these unions. But that's just my opinion. I think there's a lot of reform that needs to take place in this country, and I am actually encouraged by what Scott Morrison has said about this, about the new normal being a different Australia, and really trying to do something different when it comes to reforming, because the National Liberal Party, the Federal Liberal Party, hasn't been great at reforming, and I think that's an area where they need to get more proactive, and that's where Keating and John Howard was a great reformer. They took on things. He had the guts to go to an election with the GST on the agenda, and Paul Keating had the guts to say that we were a banana republic. And these things had to be said, and it was a reality check that Australia needed. So I just wish our politicians had a bit more ticker these days to say the same things. I'm hoping that Scott Morrison is growing into the role. He does have a streak of stubbornness there, which is annoying, but I'm hoping that he's going to learn to be a bit more flexible and decisive as well. So that would be great if that occurred. But anyway, here's this edited audio clip of the Alan Jones show. Make your judgment about Anastasia Palaszczuk. I wasn't impressed, as I said.
Now, where's your health advice that says to you that kids can't go to school when the Prime Minister says The 4 square metre rule and the 1.5 metre distancing between students during classroom activities is not appropriate and will not be required. I can't be more clear than that.
Yep, so very clearly the Prime Minister has also said that there's more chance of the teachers getting coronavirus in the tea rooms and the staff rooms, and also we have concerns about the parents. So I've now asked all of the principals to develop COVID-safe plans, and of course we'll be in key discussions with everyone, and we'll be making our decision on May 15. And of course my aim is to get more contact between teachers and students.
May 15. I mean, this is these kids are being vandalised. I mean, they're not being educated at all. All the international.
May 11th.
May 11. What is the date today? That's 2 weeks away.
Yeah, because we need another 2 weeks of the epidemiology to see how it's going from state to state, and every state is in different parts of where they are dealing with coronavirus, Alan.
That full lockdowns are unsustainable, and he says, quote, children are very low risk and economic and education costs of school closures are high.
But the teachers are at risk.
Oh no, the teachers don't run education.
No, the teachers need to make sure they have social distancing plans in place, because if teachers transmit that to one another and to the students, then the students take it home to their parents. So,
Anastasia, what does the bus driver do? What's your bus driver do? What's your bus driver do? I mean, he's in contact with people every day. And that's what the Prime Minister said, the bus driver, the supermarket staff. They have social distancing. Why not the school teacher? This is the militancy of the teachers' unions. Someone's got to stand up to them.
Well, I respectfully disagree.
Can you table health advice today that supports what you're doing?
Well, you can talk to my Chief Health Officer.
But hang on, the Chief Health Officer was the person who said on Anzac Day that 4 pilots couldn't fly a demonstration of Anzac Day of World War II planes, couldn't fly them, even though they were going to come from separate hangars, even though they were socially well distanced, they were a long way away from the people on the ground, and yet the very next day, the same health officer said, we're revising the social distancing rules. I mean, that's advice, and I understand you get that advice, but you're the one that's got to make the judgment.
And on to more pleasant things. I did my space nerding bit today, watching a can being filled with cryogenic nitrogen. This is a what's called a cryo test, and it's the SN4 Starship prototype at Boca Chica in Texas in the USA. This test was held at around 10:30 at night on Sunday night, which is it was in the afternoon our time here, about 2:30, so it was quite convenient to watch it. But the actual test there was about 10:30 at night, so you had to watch with lights and what have you. They had a telephoto lens set up with this live feed. I think it was about 5 kilometres or so away from the actual where the actual test stand was. So it's quite a distance. The only downside of that is you get a little bit of shaking, because any wind is going to move the lens around, so you get a little bit of shaking. But overall, it was pretty good. We got a pretty good vision of what was going on, and you get to see a lot of gas coming out, a lot of what they call venting. And the major thing that was avoided today, which is really good news, is that they didn't crumple up the actual fuel tank, because what had happened the previous time is that for some reason they'd vented all the nitrogen out of the bottom tank and kept the one at the top tank full, and consequently the weight was too much and the whole structure collapsed, and so it was like a beer can sort of imploding. So not a very pretty sight. But today all we got was frost on the outside, quite a bit of venting from a couple of places on the length of the actual prototype vehicle, and also there was quite a bit of smoke coming out from the bottom as well. But that was all fine. There was no rupturing of the the spaceship, so that's really good news. So what's going to happen now? It was a successful test, so fantastic. Congratulations, SpaceX. This is a huge milestone for them to get over this particular test, this cryo test, because they have trashed at least 2 other prototypes in the process of doing this, so this one survived. And the next thing that's going to happen, probably on Wednesday American time, which will be Thursday our time, they're going to do a static fire. So that just means that they'll be putting the Raptor engines on. There should be 3 Raptor engines attached to the bottom of it. And when they put them on, they're going to basically fire those up, and it'll be tethered to the launch frame, so it can't go up in the air. And then after that, presumably maybe this weekend, hopefully not much longer, we'll get to see the actual ship go up in the air for about 150 metres. So it's what's called a hop. So that'll be very exciting if that takes place. But the main thing is this major hurdle has been overcome. So sigh of relief, and I was able to watch it in the middle of the afternoon, which is quite convenient for people in Australia. So that was great. So we've got hassles with education in Australia, but I wanted to pass by a bit of good news as well. So it's not all bad, not all doom and gloom, and hopefully we'll get out of all this lockdown stuff. And I was actually listening to a podcast outlining what is happening in Spain, and it's really bad over there. They've really clamped down on people. They won't even let their kids out, and it's driving everybody berserk in the country. But apparently they will allow kids to go out for about an hour, I think, and they can stray about a kilometre from where they live. So it's still fairly restricted, but they are going to at least allow kids to go outside in a few days, apparently. But yeah, they've had it really tough, but they've had a lot of deaths over there as well. So and they have a fairly authoritarian government. So again, it's just the way it is. It depends where you go, because certain places just aren't as bad. And I was surprised to find that all places, Germany wasn't that bad. Was actually, there's an Australian girl, and she was saying it's actually easier going than it is in Australia. So that's something I didn't expect. Also, Sweden has had fairly light restrictions as well, which is also a bit of a surprise. So it does vary depending which country you're in, and that's good because it will give us an indication of really how far we need to go, and it might convince some governments to say, look, we don't need to have the people tied down this much. We can allow a lot more freedom and people to start going back to work. But that's hopefully some sanity will prevail, and we'll even have flights resuming at some stage soon. Fingers crossed. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you, or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.